First story. My pregnant wife wanted peace after her traumatic stillbirth, but my mom's selfish demands to be at the birth forced me to set a boundary that sparked family drama. My wife and I are expecting a baby girl, and while this should be an exciting time, it's also a period of anxiety for us. My wife is 7 months pregnant, and this is her second pregnancy. Her first ended in heartbreak with a stillbirth after she went into premature labor. That experience was devastating, especially for my wife. It shattered her emotionally, and I've spent every moment since trying to support her and piecing herself back together. Now, with this pregnancy, she's cautiously optimistic, but the fear hasn't left her. She has recurring nightmares about losing this baby, and she asks me multiple times a day if I think something will go wrong. Thankfully, her doctor has reassured us that everything looks good this time, and I hold on to that hope tightly. I've promised myself that I'll do everything in my power to make this journey as stress-free as possible for her. She deserves that peace after everything she's endured. We live about 9 hours away from our families. Once the baby arrives, my wife's mom plans to drive up and stay with us for a week or two. She'll be in the delivery room to support my wife, and afterward, she'll help us adjust to life with a newborn. My wife has made it clear that aside from her mom, she doesn't want visitors during those first few weeks. She needs time to recover, bond with our daughter, and settle into this new chapter without the added pressure of hosting guests. She's been very thoughtful about it, and even suggested that my parents could visit once we're ready for company. She said they could stay in our guest room to maximize their time with the baby. I completely support this plan because it prioritizes her comfort and well-being, and honestly, I think it's the best way to ensure a smooth transition for all of us. Yesterday, my mom called to ask about our birth plan. I explained the arrangement and let her know we'd love for her and my dad to come visit a few weeks after the baby is born. That's when things started to unravel. My mom immediately expressed disappointment and said she and my dad planned to drive up as soon as my wife went into labor. She mentioned staying at a nearby hotel and waiting at the hospital to meet their granddaughter as soon as she arrived. I gently explained that this wasn't part of the plan. I told her we wanted some time to adjust before having visitors and assured her that we'd make sure she and my dad had plenty of time with the baby once we were ready. I also clarified that my MIL was coming to support my wife during labor and recovery, which is very different from being a visitor. My wife feels most comfortable with her mom during such an intense and emotional time, and I don't think that's unreasonable. My mom wasn't satisfied with this explanation. She started venting about how the mother of the son always gets sidelined when grandchildren are involved. She said it was unfair that my MIL got to be there while she had to wait. She even implied that we were deliberately excluding her from this important milestone. I tried to point out the double standard. My sister had her first baby 6 months ago and hasn't allowed her MIL to visit yet because they don't get along. My mom has fully supported my sister in setting boundaries, saying it's her right as a new mom to decide what makes her comfortable. When I brought this up, my mom became defensive, claiming the situations weren't comparable because she's always been kind to my wife. I reminded her that this wasn't about her being nice or not. It was about making my wife feel supported and stress-free. After some back and forth, she grudgingly agreed to wait, and I thought that was the end of it. But I was wrong. A few hours later, my wife came to me looking upset. She said my mom had called her directly, crying and saying she felt excluded and unwelcome. My wife, being the kind-hearted person she is, took this to heart and began questioning whether we were doing the right thing. She even asked me if we should reconsider the plan to avoid hurting my mom's feelings. That was the last straw for me. My wife is already carrying so much emotional weight, and the last thing she needs is additional stress for my family. I called my mom and told her, in no uncertain terms, that she was not to contact my wife about this again. I told her that if she did, she wouldn't see the baby for 2 months, and for every additional time she crossed this boundary, I'd add another month. I admit I was frustrated and said it half-jokingly, but I was dead serious about enforcing the boundary. My mom was furious. She accused me of being disrespectful and said I was using time with the baby as a weapon to control her. Later, my dad called to back her up, saying I owed her an apology for being so harsh. He said it was unfair to punish her for expressing her feelings and that I was out of line for giving an ultimatum. I explained to him that my priority is my wife and baby. I don't want to sour my parents' relationship with their grandchild, but I also can't let their feelings take precedence over my wife's mental health. She's the one who will be going through labor and recovery, and her comfort is my main concern. Now, I'm left wondering if I was too harsh. I don't think I was wrong to set boundaries, but my mom's reaction and my dad's insistence that I apologize have me second-guessing. Did I handle this the right way? Or am I the one who crossed the line? Second story. My dad revealed his dark secret about my mom and their toxic marriage, and now I'm torn between protecting her or exposing the truth that could shatter our family forever. Growing up in my family was anything but ordinary. I've always known something was off, but it wasn't until I got older that I began to understand the dynamics. My mom has always had a short fuse, and her struggles with anger management were compounded by her alcohol dependency. It was a tough combination. My dad, on the other hand, was perpetually calm, almost too calm. It was as if he didn't want to rock the boat, no matter how toxic things got. For years, I couldn't quite grasp why my dad never stood up to my mom or left her, despite all her faults. But after years of therapy, I came to understand that he probably stayed out of guilt. My therapist believes he's haunted by the fact that he got her pregnant when she was just 16, and he was 35. The guilt of that, combined with his sense of responsibility, seems to have kept him in a situation where he's quietly stuck. To make things even more complicated, my dad makes a really good living, around $250,000 a year. That financial stability meant my mom never had to work, and over the years, she became more and more dependent on him. While it looked like they had the perfect life on the surface, I knew there were cracks beneath it. But it wasn't until one night during a business trip that I got a call that shook me. My dad, slurring his words slightly, definitely a bit tipsy, told me something I wasn't expecting. He said he couldn't divorce my mom just yet, because if he did, he'd end up paying her more in alimony than if he waited until he retired. I was stunned. He went on to tell me that I should talk to my younger sister, or my half-sister, who was 36, if I didn't believe him. So I did. I reached out to both sisters. My half-sister, who hasn't spoken to my mom in years, and my younger sister, who's had her own falling out with mom. They confirmed it. Every week, my dad calls them, sharing more and more details about how badly he wants to get back at my mom. The anger he's been holding in for decades is slowly boiling over. I don't want to paint my mom as some angel. She's not. She wasn't the best mom to me, and there's a long history of physical abuse and dysfunction. There were times when child services was called, and I can't even begin to explain the affair she had. But after years of distance, and then becoming a mother myself, my perspective has shifted. I started to understand that she didn't get to where she is by accident. My mom had a rough upbringing. Her father abused her severely. He beat her, held guns to her, made her work for him, and even took her money, all before she turned 16. Then my dad came into the picture, and I see now how he essentially groomed her to become a young mom, bringing with him a host of emotional baggage. When I had my own child, everything changed for me. Now that I'm raising a 2-year-old, I see how crazy life is when it's the first time around. We're all figuring it out as we go. And to my surprise, my mom has started to change too. After becoming a grandmother, she started taking ADHD medication, which has helped her manage her anger better. Over time, she's become a kinder, more patient person. I've watched her evolve, and I've even started to build a better relationship with her. Now I'm finding myself in a weird place. Despite everything that happened, we've become close, and she's a great support system for me while my husband is deployed. My daughter adores her, and my mom follows my rules, spoils her in the best ways, and is incredibly involved in her life. So, with all of this weighing on me, here's where I stand. Do I tell my mom about what my dad said? Should I confront my dad? Do I sit them both down and hash this out? I don't know if it's my place to get involved in their mess. On one hand, I want to protect my mom and make sure she's aware of everything that's going on. On the other, I don't want to stir up more drama, especially when we've only just started rebuilding our relationship. I'm torn. Is it my responsibility to bear this information, or should I stay out of it? I'd really appreciate any advice, because I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. Third story. AITA for exposing my sister's secret weed party while my mom struggles with legal issues over custody of my younger sister. The shocking consequences led to her getting kicked out. Now she won't speak to me. Hey everyone, I need some advice, and I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. I don't know if I did the right thing, and I'm hoping someone can offer a perspective that'll help clear my head. I'm 19, and I live on my own. My mom, Rachel, is 39, and she lives with my 18-year-old sister, Emily, in a flat they share. I don't live there anymore, But my mom and sister are my family, so I still make an effort to visit them. The reason I'm writing is because something happened recently, and I'm feeling guilty about how I handled it. Let me give you a bit of context first. My mom is going through a tough time. She's dealing with some serious legal issues regarding the custody of my younger sister, Lily, who's only 2 years old. Lily has asthma, which is really important in this whole situation. Her dad, my mom's ex, has been lying and spreading rumors about her using alcohol and drugs, which has caused a mess with social services. Lily's living in a monitored unit for now while they investigate. My mom's just trying to keep things together, and it's not easy. Anyway, the other day, I decided to head over to my mom's flat to keep Emily company. She's been struggling a bit with everything going on, and I figured spending time with her would help. When I got there, the first thing that caught my eye was a guy in Emily's room. He was asleep in her bed. Now, I don't know who he was, and honestly, I didn't want to make a scene, so I didn't say anything. The guy left shortly after I got there, so I figured it was a one-time thing. The next day, though, things took a turn. My mom called Emily to check in, and apparently, she asked if anyone was staying over, which Emily hadn't told her about. My mom was just trying to keep track of who's in and out, given the stress with Lily's situation. Emily, instead of just telling her, decided to argue with her about it. I couldn't believe it. My mom was just asking out of concern, but Emily got defensive, and it turned into a full-blown argument. After the call, I had to step in and lecture Emily about how she shouldn't be acting that way. But it didn't seem to have much of an impact. It felt like no matter what I said, she was in the wrong headspace. A few hours later, Emily told me she was planning to go to a club with some friends, so they came over to pregame at the flat. She didn't mention it to my mom, and I didn't know about it until later. I was in the lounge playing video games, minding my own business. But when I went into Emily's room to tell her I was leaving for the club, I was hit with this thick cloud of weed smoke. I couldn't believe it. I immediately called my mom and let her know what was going on, and she was beyond furious. Emily didn't take it well. Instead of apologizing or even trying to make things right, she argued with Mom about kicking her friends out. That's when my mom dropped the bomb. Emily was going to have to stay with our dad for a while. My mom couldn't deal with this kind of disrespect, especially with everything going on. Emily didn't take that well at all, and now she's not speaking to me. She's livid. I feel awful because I don't want to hurt my sister. But at the same time, I can't just let her get away with this kind of behavior. I wanted to confront her friends myself for disrespecting the flat and causing trouble, but I didn't want to make things worse. Did I overstep by getting my mom involved? I still feel guilty, but I don't know if I did the wrong thing. What would you have done in my situation?